Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a creator request, which is where a smaller band gets in contact with me and asks me to check out their work. We're going to be looking at the group Salos today, or maybe Salos. I'm not sure. The title is Leviathan, though, and looking at their YouTube channel, this is the only video they have, so maybe this is their full debut, the first thing they've ever released. It's described as instrumental post-metal, saying that this piece explores disintegration and memory, where sand becomes memory, the sea becomes the voice, and the cave becomes a gateway. It's meant to be confronted rather than consumed. Let's dive into this and see where they're taking us today. A lot of energy, and while there is a focus on atmosphere, there's still a melodic. There is melody within this. Is that a 7? That's definitely 4. Oh, I like that. That's a fun little idea off on the left. The tremolo and all of the effects on the guitars work really well at building atmosphere right here. That's a nice riff. Nice 3 right here. Keeping the same energy rhythmically, but shifting into a different atmosphere to build into. Yeah. Bells in the background. Yeah, dude. and a really nice addition to the driving guitars. Yeah, solid track right there. This is a band I think you gotta keep an eye on, especially if you're an enjoyer of atmospheric styles of music. But I think it actually, let me take that back. An enjoyer of instrumental metal, because described as post metal in their email, I expected something a little less engaging. I know post metal can be large and driving, but to me, I think I always fall back on the atmospheric wall of sound. That's, to me, is like the core of what post metal tends to be. Not an exclusive way to make post metal, but what so many bands tend to lean into, copying or wearing the influence of the ocean. And this really expanded upon that. There are moments in here, dense, thick with atmosphere. The tremolo section I thought was a great moment for that specifically, but it's always used as a jumping off point, something to build off of rather than to be the main attraction. And I think we saw that even from the start. We kicked off with a little bit of atmosphere and quickly moved on into melodic riff writing, and then eventually into a lead melody. And honestly, I think that's one of my favorite parts about this track, is its reliance on melodic qualities. The riffs themselves are always moving, they're always building into ideas, they loop back in on themselves, sure, but they also have directionality to them. They are giving us information. But even then, the band doesn't stop there. There needs to be a melody, and they typically lean into that. And that's exactly the way that I tend to write instrumental parts too. It's what I like to hear in music. And they showcase that really well. But it isn't just the fact that they add melodic ideas to their music, it's that I generally find the melodies to be well written and narratively important. I actually found myself second guessing the band as we were coming up to the end of that track. There was a lead guitar section in, I don't know, we were probably like 2:45, 3 minutes into the song, definitely on the back half, maybe even the last quarter of the track. And we had a lead guitar line on top of all this driving movement, and it had a really solid, like 8-bar idea, and I assumed we were gonna loop it back to the beginning to kick that off again. So many bands, that would be an accurate expectation for what they're doing, and they didn't. They continued to develop it. It wasn't a statement to be reiterated. It was part of a larger conversation. There was a period, maybe a semicolon here, but it doesn't mean we're going back. We have to continue to push forward. And so much of this track feels like that, especially on the melodic lines. It's about larger ideas. Even the song as a whole, for only being 4 minutes long, there's a lot of sections in here. I think the average section is only going to be 50 seconds in length, give or take. It's a track that is, interestingly, almost always focused on what comes next and how do we get there. Which I say interestingly because described to me by the band, this is a song of memory. I don't really get a lot of that out of the music, but I really hope that they come into the comment section and kind of, if they want to, explain themselves, their intentions with the piece, and how how they came about making these musical decisions in order to embody these thoughts that they wanted to express through sonic art. Because honestly, what I get out of this song is movements into the future. I don't really hear a lot of recollection or um, longing for the past. I don't hear any, bittersweet or negativity or even a neutrality about the past. There isn't really much of a pensiveness to this track. To me, it's forward. Part of that comes from the melody writing, how it's consistently developing, pushing into the next idea, not really looking at loops, but on full, complete, lengthy sentences. But it's also about the pacing and flow of this track. Ideas do bleed into one another. Sections are developed and evolved as they become new ideas. There's one place in here, I think, where we have a very hard stop between two ideas, and I'm sure that means something, but other than that, everything is about evolution. How do we get from here to here in a semi-natural, at least, and incredibly natural in some instances, movement and transition? How do we grow and evolve? As I mentioned, there's quite a few sections in this arguably short track, and yet none of them feel out of place. None of them feel like we were instantly transported to somewhere. It's pretty easy to trace back the musical decisions, the harmonic devices, the rhythmic choices, the melodies that have led us to where we are now. And maybe that is part of the memory thing, how easy it is to trace back every step, drawing a line and following with thread, starting from the end to the beginning of the song. It is something that very well focuses on cause and effect. If we change this idea, it becomes a new section. If we modify this in the section, it becomes this idea. It's about the gradual response and change of the music. It isn't so much of a track that is verse chorus where we have this riff and this drum pattern for this part and this riff and drum pattern for this part, and we just change. You stop playing one riff to play another. That's how a lot of metal, and a lot of music in general is built around. And it's not a wrong way to make music, but it is something that I find I gravitate less to usually. And I love this sort of evolutionary style of writing where there's a gradual exploration, how it's easy to say, yeah, we got here because we modified this and changed that and foreshadowed this all the way back to the beginning of the song. It's in the dynamic shifts, it's in the rhythmic changes, the harmonies, the melodies, everything in here connects to where we are going eventually. But another way that this song feels momentous to me, and I think this one's going to be something everyone picked up on, is the speed, the intensity of this track. We do bring the energy down in a couple of places, and I do feel like we have a little bit of a lull, a lighter moment in the middle of the track, but we kick it off pretty intense and we finish it up pretty intense too. There's a lot of snare work in here. I don't know if there's a psychology behind this, but when you play the snare a lot, it feels driving. You don't really get that with a lot of cymbals. If you just start doing 16th notes on a cymbal, it sounds frantic. And I think because of the vibrations and the overlapping sound, it can become very noisy. We can attribute some chaotic elements to that. Bass kicks, 16th note bass kicks, they can be driving based on the production, but I think that the lower end sound of them kind of creates more of a rumbly tone. If you go for a very clean, high fidelity, crisp production, you could probably have a driving element out of that, but it's not an instrument that I usually think of momentum coming from. But the snare, you get a lot of this. I think this is why blast beats create such anxiety and tension, is because they feel, because of the hyper focus on the snare sound, it feels like we're going somewhere very quickly. I think that there is a clear reason, even if I don't know what it is, why the snare is so widely used in punk music that's supposed to be, generally speaking, high energy. No matter what subgenre you're in, punk is a high energy genre, and it's also one that really focuses on the snare of the drum kit. And in here, we don't have blast beats, but we do have some sections where we have quarter note snares. And these are in contrast to places where we might get 1 or 2 snare hits every bar. And I think that this contrast here, it's going to show things slow down a little bit, but it also allows us to feel immediately from the start this idea of being pulled into, ripped into the moment. You really don't have a moment to adjust to the beginning of this track. It kicks in and you're here. And like I said, being told it was post-metal, I wasn't expecting this type of intensity, rhythmic intensity from the start. Harmonic intensity, atmospheric intensity, sure. Post-metal, that's kind of what I expect from the genre, but not this type of drum work. And to start the song off with that and then bring in these faster riffs and bring in the strong melodic writing and to wrap up the song on these same ideas, it's very much about now and the future. Parts of this song feel like sprinting to me, or at least a solid jog. There's a lot of forward momentum about taking that next step. And when you pair that with the general compositional evolution, it's a song that feels very focused on what comes next, on the future, of trying to be 2 to 3 steps ahead, of having a plan. That's what this song ends up feeling like to me, because of many choices in here. Now, I do love this sort of inverted bell curve here. As I mentioned, we start the song pretty intense with lots of snare. We kind of bring that energy down in the middle, and then we ramp it back up for more of a sustained ending. So that's kind of cool. We have a nice contrast element there. It allows us to feel the energy, have a moment to catch our breath, and to finish up the song on this high energy stuff. It works really well. Just from a contrast area, but also from storytelling. Maybe the middle part is the element of looking back on, reflection and pensiveness. I didn't really get those feelings from the song, but looking at the general flow, I think you could make an argument that that's what this moment is supposed to be about. And then the evolution out of it would be the ways that we make choices based on our past, who we were, what choices we've made, what sort of consequences we've had for those choices, informing how we will act now and how we will plan to act in the future. But all of this wraps up to the title of Leviathan, which, unless we're looking at time as a titan, I'm not quite sure how the title bleeds into this. I think that's going to wrap up my analysis on this, though. I really enjoyed this. And like I mentioned when the song wrapped up, I think this is going to be a band a lot of people are going to keep their eye on, looking forward to those new releases and the eventual EP or LP that gets released 2026. I know music making can take time, and if this is a side hobby, you have life and maybe families, jobs and stuff like that. But this is a solid debut, and if Salos, again, I wish I knew the pronunciation on this. If they got an album out by December, and it's as much quality as this is, I could easily see this being on AOTY lists for anyone paying attention to up-and-coming bands. All right, it's going to wrap this one up. These are my thoughts. What are yours, though? Did you enjoy this? Is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation? Maybe you need to correct me on something if I misspoke. Do you have your own thoughts, opinions, perspectives on this? Maybe a different interpretation of this track than I did. Please put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comment section below. In the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree, my stuff, but above that, more importantly, you'll find links to this band, their social media, streaming sites, Bandcamp, their website, if they have merch and stuff, anything I can do to help you find more of their stuff if you're interested and get connected with them. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. If you head on over to any of their places, thumbs up, hearts, stars, whatever they use for their algorithms and stuff, show them some love from the Critical Reactions community. It's going to wrap it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.